Jungsik in New York City is regarded as one of the best Korean restaurants in the world. In fact, there are currently only 2 Korean restaurants with 3 Michelin stars, and Jungsik is one of them. Simply put, I had to give Jungsik a try, and I went all out with their $325 tasting menu, and it was a meal to remember.
Today I'm here in New York City, right along the Hudson River, and it is a very special day indeed because I'll be going to one of the world's greatest Korean restaurants, which also happens to be the latest NYC establishment to achieve 3 Michelin stars. I'll be dining at Jungsik. Now, I've said this before, but Korean cuisine, particularly those restaurants within the fine dining realm, is really having a moment here in NYC. And with the promotion of Jungsik from 2 to 3 stars last year, it really just shows that Korean cuisine is right at the top, along with the more established cuisines like French, contemporary, and whatnot. Now, I'm always excited to go to any restaurant, but 3 Michelin starred establishments, now those are special. As a result, 3-starred establishments typically have high prices to boot. And that is pretty much the main reason why I haven't been to Jungsik yet. But the year is rapidly coming to a close, and I made it a point that I would visit that restaurant this year. A few days ago, I looked at Jungsik's reservations, and there was one left for 5 p.m. this month, so I took it. Now, this is a very expensive time of the year for me, but I cannot let an opportunity like dining at Jungsik pass me by. The fact is, I can make it work, and I've made it work in the past when I've dined at some of these other fancy, expensive 3 Michelin starred restaurants like 11 Madison Park and Per Se. In the weeks that followed that meal, I made some sacrifices, and as a result, I was able to go to some of these bucket list establishments. The thing is, I can't quite remember exactly what I sacrificed to be able to afford those meals, but I sure as hell remember those meals. And that is what I hope to have tonight, an amazing, unforgettable culinary memory. So with that being said, let's head to Jungsik and make some special memories.
Jungsik is located in the Tribeca neighborhood of New York City and opened its doors back in 2011. However, the restaurant actually has roots that go a bit further back. New York's Jungsik actually stemmed from the sole location of the restaurant of the same name, which opened in 2009. Both restaurants are the product of chef Jungsik Yim. In fact, the name of the restaurants, Jungsik, is sort of a play on words. In one respect, it comes from the name of the establishment's chef, but also in the Korean language, Jungsik refers to a formal dinner. For a number of years, Jungsik maintained 2 Michelin stars, but was promoted to 3 in 2024, which was a huge deal for a multitude of reasons. For one thing, NYC was in a sort of drought when it came to crowning new 3-starred restaurants, as the last place to earn that distinction was 11 Madison Park back in 2012. The other aspect regarding Jungsik's promotion was that it signified just how far Korean restaurants have come with regards to fine dining. These days, there are numerous Korean Michelin-starred restaurants out there, including Atomix, which was recently named as the best restaurant in North America and the 12th best restaurant in the world. There's no doubt about it, Korean restaurants are having a moment, and Jungsik is helping to lead the way. I was incredibly excited for my dinner at Jungsik, so I arrived to the restaurant at 5 p.m. on a Thursday for my reservation. After I was seated, I took in the space. Jungsik is a bright and modern fine dining establishment. There were elegant touches throughout the restaurant. Jungsik definitely has an air of formality to it, but I was easily able to relax, get comfortable, and enjoy a very special meal combined with excellent service. But first, I explored the menus. Regarding cuisine, Jungsik is a tasting menu establishment, although one could order a la carte at the bar. Including the banchan, Jungsik's tasting menu consists of about 10 courses, but there are also a couple of optional supplements. I decided to add on the carrot, but I held off on getting the sea urchin bibimbap since that came with a $75 cost and I was already spending quite a bit. Next, I checked out the beverage options. Jungsik has an extensive selection of wine along with a series of cocktails. The restaurant also has a few pairing options with the tasting menu, and while any of those pairings would have been nice, I ultimately went with wine by the glass purely for cost reasons. I started with a glass of the 2023 Von Holvel Riesling Cabernet from the Moselle Valley. Now that was a pleasant wine. It was vivid and flavorful and very drinkable. Soon enough, it was time for the tasting menu to begin, and it started with the banchan. I received a tray with 6 beautifully constructed and intriguing bites. They were basically a series of amuses to kick off the meal. Since many of them would require using my hands, I was given a sort of towelette to first cleanse my hands, and then I dug right in. My server instructed me to start at the bottom right of the tray and work my way up. The first piece of banchan I tried was the kong guk, which was a soybean soup with truffle pearls. The second that soup hit my palate, I knew that I was in for a special meal. It was so rich and just packed with flavor. It was a 10 out of 10. It was amazing. Next up was the Wagyu beef tartare with truffle on brioche. Just like my first bite, it was perfect. That beef was simply on another level. For my third piece of banchan, it was a tofu dish, and I loved it. Simply put, the restaurant did such a spectacular job of putting together that tray of banchan, which was filled with such great variety in terms of flavors and textures. Regarding the fourth bite, it was one of my favorites. It consisted of jeju fluke, soy cream, and gochujang. That really was a delight. It was crisp and flavorful with a subtle spice. After that was another hit. It was a bold, black squid ink rice ball with squid and shrimp. To put it plainly, it was perfect. Finally, I finished with a sweet sort of tart containing foie gras, Asian pear, and pine nut. That tart was remarkable. To put it plainly, Jungsik's tray of banchan was the definition of perfection. After the banchan, I was presented with the striped jack with sauce poured tableside. The dish also consisted of caviar and white kimchi. Everything about that course was on the mark. The fish was spectacular, that sauce was luscious and flavorful, and the saltiness of the caviar was a true delight. My dinner at Jungsik was certainly shaping up to be something special. Next up was perhaps the most famous dish from Jungsik, the octopus, which also consisted of a nice dollop of gochujang aioli. I was really looking forward to that course, and I wasn't disappointed. That octopus was extraordinary. First off, it was perfectly cooked. It was so tender and crispy. On its own, the octopus was perfect, but it transcended to otherworldly heights with that supremely balanced gochujang aioli. The level of spice and flavor of that sauce was on point, as it didn't overwhelm the octopus but nicely complemented it. To sum it up, that dish lived up to the hype. Following the octopus was a scallop course that also included a touch of tableside preparation. The scallop was housed in a scalding hot pot filled with squid ink rice. The audible sizzle of the course was music to my ears, but it was clearly hot, so I went in to take a bite with a bit of caution. That was an excellent course, but damn was it hot. I probably should have let it cool for a bit. Nevertheless, it was great. The scallop was perfectly cooked and the texture of the crispy squid ink rice was fantastic. It was kind of like the crispy layer of rice in a paella. Overall, that was another excellent dish. Next up was the Arctic char, which was cured and dry aged and came with a perilla emulsion. Now that was a good looking dish. I loved all the colors, but as I was about to find out, it tasted even better. That Arctic char was perfectly cooked. The fish was tender and flaky, but the contrast of the salty, crispy skin was a textural delight. The sauce accompanying the Arctic char was packed with flavor, and the little pops of caviar were so pleasant. Once again, Jungsik nailed it. Following the Arctic char was a fun course. It was the yellowtail kimbap, which contained truffle rice and seaweed bugak. The amusing thing about the dish was that it required a bit of construction on my part. I was given a small set of tongs, which I utilized to place the slices of the yellowtail on top of the kimbap. The combination of the fish with the roll was top tier. Now, the roll by itself was pretty much perfect. It was so crispy and flavorful, but the pairing of the fish truly completed the course and also made it just fun. Sometimes I feel like courses requiring a bit of work on the part of the diner can be a bit gimmicky, but that kimbap was a serious piece of food and I loved it. Following the kimbap was the last savory course of the meal, the galbi. It was basically the restaurant's version of Korean barbecue, consisting of American Wagyu short rib galbi.
Underneath is your kondarepa. What I'll be spooning on top for you is a kaibiju, finished off with beach mushrooms.
That beef looked absolutely spectacular, but besides the meat, I was also given a couple of sides. One was a small sort of salad, and the other was white kimchi. I was really excited about that course, and like everything I had from the restaurant, it delivered. That beef was simply wonderful. The kalbi jus added such a pleasant sweetness and sense of delicateness to the meat. However, with the mushrooms and barley rice paired with the beef, there was definitely a sense of heartiness to the plate. I also appreciated the two sides that were included as they were both pleasant on their own, but it was nice to have something light paired with the meat. In a way, the salad and kimchi acted as sort of palate cleansers from the bold, rich flavors of the beef. Overall, that was a great presentation of food. I was a bit sad that the savory portion of my meal was over, but dessert would prove to be just as special. First up was a strawberry sorbet with an oat yuja bingsu. Now that was a sort of transitionary dish to bridge the gap to dessert, and it succeeded in the most pleasant way. The strawberry sorbet was remarkably refreshing, but I loved the textural contrast of the oat yuja bingsu. For a palate cleanser dessert, that was an utter success. Next up was a veritable work of art. It was the dol horobong with black bean rice and sesame. The dessert was constructed to resemble the iconic volcanic stone statues of Jeju Island. In fact, the dish was originally a part of the Korean location of Jungsik's menu, but then was also added to New York's menu. It seemed a shame to bite into such a beautiful and creative work of art, but after tasting it, that remorse quickly dissipated. That dessert was a triumph. The little statue portion was filled with a hazelnut cream, and combined with the ice cream on the plate, it equated to be a truly top-tier dessert. I thought that dish was a great example of Jungsik as a whole. It was modern and unique, but all the flavors were on point and there was a bit of fun to it. Now that's a dish that I won't forget. In fact, the next course was another unforgettable creation. It's known simply as the carrot. That was a supplement dish that I paid extra for, but I was soon to find out that the additional cost would prove to be worth it. I first picked the carrot from a stunning garden display and added it to my plate, which included a black tea ice cream. Now that is a dessert dish, so of course that's not a real carrot, but rather a clever white chocolate coated vessel containing a cream cheese mousse. Basically, that was carrot cake, and it was spectacular. The black tea ice cream was wonderful as well and paired perfectly with the carrot. Overall, I loved that dish, and it seemed to act in a way as a sort of sequel to one of Jungsik's most iconic desserts, the baby banana. The dish was the product of Jungsik's former pastry chef Eun-ji Lee, who left the restaurant to open her own pastry shop, Lise, which I think is one of the best places for pastries and desserts in all of New York City. I wish that I had the chance to try the baby banana dessert, but there's no doubt about it, that carrot is still a triumph. Finally, it was on to the last dish. It was a choux pastry filled with a mazel cream. Accompanying the pastry were a few pedophores. The choux pastry was utterly delightful, and I can say the same for each of the pedophores. Overall, I loved my meal at Jungsik. Every single thing was spectacular. Now, of course, it was costly, but to me, it was money well spent. That evening at Jungsik left me with the type of culinary memory that I live for. And speaking of the cost, it was time for the bill. with the way Jungsik handles reservations, I had to pay for nearly my whole meal in advance. As a result, I only had to pay for my wine and supplemental dessert. In total, with everything combined, including the tip, I spent nearly $492. Yeah, I definitely had to watch my spending following that dinner. In addition, I was given a menu listing the courses that I enjoyed that evening, which was certainly an evening to remember.
That was absolutely extraordinary. Without question, that was the best meal I had so far this year. Now, the dinner I had back in Chicago at Next with my father will always be special because I got to spend it with someone I love, but from a culinary standpoint, Jungsik takes the cake. Still, just considering the food, Next would easily come in second place. Jungsik though, now that was special. Everything I had at the restaurant this evening was utterly incredible. I hardly have any complaints, and the ones I do are just small nitpicking things that frankly I could care less about. Like the scallop dish I had. I thought it was a little too hot, but who the hell cares? You just let the damn thing cool a bit. Basically, I just had a smile on my face during the whole dinner. It was just so amazing. Even the banchan, I was blown away with every single bite. It was all just so incredible. Now the octopus, now that's a signature dish for a reason. That was unequivocally one of the best octopus dishes that I've ever had. I also was really fond of the Arctic char. It was cooked so perfectly, and that crispy skin combined with that flavorful sauce, oh, it was heaven. Now that was very costly, and like I said, I'll have to make a few sacrifices in the coming weeks to be able to justify that cost. But the thing is, I'll be making those sacrifices with the biggest damn smile on my face because I'm left with one hell of a fine memory. To sum it up, Jungsik is a very special restaurant. I had an amazing meal this evening, and I'm so happy that they have 3 Michelin stars. I will absolutely be back.